Thanks everybody for taking time out of what are no doubt your busy days to be here to hear me speak on the art of negotiation and not overpaying for SaaS. Um, None of this is going to be a silver bullet or anything that's going to magically solve your problem. Some of it involves a lot of hard work, but I think if you take a look or if you give it a listen and keep an open mind, hopefully you'll take a couple of tips. And I'm excited to gain insights and tips and hear questions too throughout in the chat. Please feel free to do that. We'll try to keep up with them or just aggregate them depending on how I go. But yeah, so just diving in, introducing myself. My name is Mousa Hamad. I'm the Vice President of Corporate IT and Procurement at Pushpay. Pushpay is a software donor engagement platform, typically centered around the faith sector, and it's been in existence for over 10 years. Started down in Auckland, New Zealand, and is heavily has a lot of activity and employees in the United States today. So I've been in tech for 15 years. I started as a tier one tech, just fixing printers and replacing RAM and motherboards. Really fell into it and fell in love with it. And kind of throughout my years of not having any tech background, I tell people when they ask, how'd you get to the point where you got? And I was all about the customer service aspect of it. And I still till today enjoy that. And I think there's an element of that will show through in what we talk about with negotiation tactics. I am a father. That's my 5-year-old daughter, Malaya. I do reside on the Gulf Coast of Florida. So currently in the present track of Hurricane Ian here in the next 24 hours, when we're not having a torrential storm bearing down on us, I do enjoy riding my bike around the waterfront, Punta Gorda, where I live, play basketball out there as well, and do some paddle boarding. So it's a little bit about me, just because it's not all work, obviously. Shout out to Tallahassee. I saw that in the chat there. So, in looking at the agenda, kind of some of the things, we're going to talk about building the foundation around how you get to the point to be armed to be a good negotiator. I'll talk specifically about some of the real world experiences that I went through and some of the things that I did to kind of help facilitate that, what those impacts were directly on negotiation and the benefits of the fruits of your labor of spending the countless hours combing through file shares and email addresses in the emails looking for contracts. As we move on a little bit here, I joke a long time ago in a startup far away because I'm a nerd, whatever. But it's not necessarily just a startup far away, as I say that. It also is true of companies that have been in existence for 50, 60 years, because while their processes and everything have been up and going for that long, the idea of purchasing SaaS is a relatively new phenomena, and companies, old, young, big, and small, I think seem to find that there's a pain point with it, and also find that when they get to a really good place with it, they're in a much better situation. I think to become an effective negotiator, you have to fully understand your landscape, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. If you feel a little overwhelmed by your SaaS and you don't know that you have a full handle on what you have, odds are you've been like me in a past life where you're slacking with the stakeholder of a software that you're going into a negotiation to renew. And it's a significant 5 or 6 figure deal, and you're kind of catching information on the fly going in. It doesn't matter how good you are at negotiating, you're never going to lead out with the best foot. You're never going to be in the best possible situation if you're coming into a negotiation like that. So talking about what I've done at both early, mid-stage startup type companies or even large, long established publicly traded companies, it was really a 3-pronged attack to get to the point where we were effective at negotiating as an entity. The first is the discovery, and that literally starts with, I'll reference back to the 2019 panel I did with Ryan about Zylo and Octane. And it was actually, I think, Adrian that said it, but it was follow the money. If you know where you're spending money, then you know what software you're buying. And so literally did a line by line scan of that, searching contracts in folders and in Slack and in emails and all of that stuff. And then talking to multiple departments who would have a vested interest at one time or another of aggregating contracts as well, because odds are they have good repositories. And what you'll probably find is that there are multiple repositories for contracts in your company. And as we all agree, if multiple people are doing something, odds are nobody's doing it fully. Getting into the process a little bit, was big on collaboration, communication methods, using Slack threads, creating Slack channels to track renewals so that all the different stakeholders and folks that need input are there. Which tools are you going to use? Obviously, years ago, when I first endeavored on SaaS management, I selected Zylo. I'm here speaking on it today because I'm a big believer in it. I've used Asana and Smartsheet and other project management tools and Atlassian Suite to track the progress of renewals, as well as information about that renewal. And then it really goes to establishing a culture of communication and tracking, celebrating wins, and getting everybody invested. And where that comes in on the negotiation piece is if you have partners within the business and you're able to have them ride alongside you, or you're able to ride alongside them effectively in a contract renewal or a new tool contract discussion, you're going to be that much more effective at coming at the I don't know, the opposing party, the other side, whatever you want to call them, in terms of the conversation and the perspectives that you can bring. So after you do all that hard work, my anecdotal story is that my SaaS journey started in December of 2017, 2 months after my now 5-year-old was born. And it was sitting there with a big monitor on my kitchen table, combing through files and emails and everything that I could to find contracts. That was not a happy place. But eventually, if you do it right and you get everybody involved, you do get a happy place where you have all your contracts in one place and you're out ahead of renewals and doing all that good stuff. All of these things that feed the happy place are going to feed a lot of the levers around negotiation that we'll talk about on the next slide, which is really kind of the meat of what we're trying to get at. But the less duplication of tools you have across the business that do redundant functions, the more licensing you'll buy from a single vendor, better economies of scale, right? More time allows you to sanity check the market. I mean, one of the things, I'm not going to sit here and say that I sit and read LinkedIn and just search for new SaaS tools all day. But one of the values that I feel like we add to our business, where they view us not only as good negotiators, but we can also be good advisors. And being a good advisor and creating options for your purchaser as the person in the seat of procurement allows you to be a more effective negotiator, because you can take 3 really good top tier vendor choices in a vertical and effectively put them against each other, right? Because they're all going to want to earn that new label. And so there is value in having those relationships and having that knowledge of the SaaS space as it relates to doing your procurement function. Being viewed as a partner, again, goes back to that same thing. Having an open Slack channel where folks can just ask about software ideas puts you out ahead of any purchasing trends that the business may have. And that, again, just puts you in a better position to be successful. And then being transparent both internally and internally. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit also. So kind of come in here, and this is kind of the levers you can pull, probably the big meat of it and where I'm going to hang out the most. Early action puts you in the driver's seat. So currently working on KPIs internally for us where we want to be out 90 days ahead of the notification period. This is one of those things where sometimes it goes unsaid, and it's typically not anything that you have to worry about where I've ever seen a vendor be punitive. But let's be real. Part of this for me when I go into a negotiation is I've got an account executive on the other side who's trying to achieve the same outcome I am, which is to get the best possible deal for everybody involved so that we can all walk away happy. And I kind of view some of these hygienic things that we talk about where you're out ahead of the renewal period as not a way to frame it of being punitive and saying, hey, we're going to leave. It's, hey, look, we're happy with your tool, but we can't have you beat us over the head. Here you go, salesperson X that I'm working with. One of the levers that I'm going to allow you to pull with your management, your deal desk in the process is that I've come to you early to open up the possibility of an open bid so that you can help me keep the costs down. So even when you're doing this and coming at it, you can still look at it as a partnership with the AE and be upfront about it. Hey, we're trying to establish that we can't have our costs go up very high on this. We're trying to empower ourselves to be in a position to make the best decision. And we think that by being transparent with you about this, it'll empower you to give us the best deal and everybody can walk away happy. I've never played this punitively or in a mean way. I think I have this later in my notes, but I'll say it now. I always come into these transparent and with as much kindness as I absolutely can. And the reason for that, and some advice that I got many years ago, but took me way too long to listen to it probably, is that it's a lot easier to kind of walk back being nice than it is to walk back being an asshole. And so for me, this isn't about one-upping anyone or doing anything. It's, hey, this is what we do internally, and this is how it informs the way we negotiate, and this is what we expect from our partners in response to that. So having a really strong KPI around letting your business know early on that a renewal is coming up starts the conversation and allows you to be transparent and leverage that. Yeah, thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. You got to kind of frame it in a way where it's not an us versus them type of deal. So yeah, so early action puts you in the driver's seat. This will be one that is so obvious, but still one that's worth touching on. You know, how many of you all, show of hands, whatever you want to do. Here's a poll. How many project management tools are in your business today? 1, 2 to 4, or 5 or more, or whatever. Megan, you can pick a better breakdown that works. I guarantee you that the answer is not going to be 1 for anybody unless they're like a 10-person company, right? And so that is what we had. The effect that I've had at a couple different places. 3 used to be 7. Yeah, see, Ryan put in that work. What I've had at every place I've ever been is multiple project management tools, and every single one of them is being paid for via a credit card through the main site with, like, you know, just standard 5-10% discount, whatever, for paying annually up front, or just having a recurring payment set up or whatever. But as an example, if you're able to kind of, now this is where it's a unique spot for us, for myself sitting in IT, where we can really help guide that discussion. But I'm a believer now that procurement departments have a larger voice at the table and have an opportunity to make these feelings heard and known. But from our IT seat, we're able to kind of influence when we see that there's an opportunity to get somebody off of a less utilized tool. And for us, as an example, let's say we move them to like a Rike or a Smart Sheet. It's a win. And then eventually we get to the point where we can then go to that vendor, or they even come to us, and say, hey, you've got a lot of seats. Why don't we talk about an enterprise solution? Yada, yada. So I found that this is most effective with PM tools. And then it seems to be also something that kind of can plague marketing from time to time a little bit with other tools in their vertical also. But this is long tail. If Ryan were able to join the virtual stage with me and I asked him, dude, how long did it take you to get from 7 to 3? I guarantee you he's not going to say 6 months or 8 months, right? He probably put in quite a bit of work to get there. And so these are the types of things that you have to be thinking about as part of a long-term vision, and not something that you're going to come in and get a quick win over, because A, it takes time to transition people to different tools. But B, and more important to the conversation, is that it takes time to build that trust with people to get to the point where they'll hear you on leaving the tool. Understanding the nature of the relationship. This is where we're currently working at Pushpay as a part of our maturation. We have a director of procurement who is leveraging Zylo for this, but we're effectively wanting to kind of track the temperature of the relationship, much in the same way that I think a lot of customer success functions have like a churn monitor, heart monitor tool for their customers. We effectively want to do the same within procurement. Because let me tell you right now, if you've been lacking in your support, I got excited just now. It's like the most energy I've had in a while. If you don't have top tier support, your response times aren't good. I'm not going to name names, but let's say I've had 5 CSMs in 14 months, outages, security concerns. Look, you don't want those things of your vendor, but if they're going to happen, and again, you're not coming at it punitively. It's like, look, if it's a consumption-based tool, as an example, and you've churned 5 CSMs in 14 months, how confident can we be in our configuration that we're optimized and we should be paying what we should be paying and not overpaying? So if you're going to come at me with an overage, as an example of a negotiation tactic that happens, come at me with an overage, that's fine, but you better be able to validate that I'm getting every bit of value out of my dollar. And I'll tell you guys, this has happened a couple of times. And when this argument holds firm, when there's any like stink around I'm not great with my words today. I've used them all in Hurricane Prep Mine. If there's any stink around that relationship and the dynamic and response times and things like that, a company would be remiss to not hear you and at least do the one thing that they can, which is impact the bottom line. So, this is the type of information that if you're gathering 90 days out, you're not surprising them with it last minute. You've got time to put all your cards on the table. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say I lay all of these cards out at once. There's some gamesmanship there. There's some sequencing that happens, and you have to make those decisions on the fly and as the conversation unfolds. But there is opportunity to use this type of dynamic with a vendor to help drive costs down on a renewal. You can also use that same track when you're looking to sign up brand new. But to me, if you're coming at them talking a lot of outages, security incidents, things like that, maybe rethink even going with them. But that's a different conversation. Bringing your stakeholders along. This is a really fun one. This ends up being one of the things that for me on the places that I've done this, it actually builds a lot of morale and gets excitement around this. So look, part of this to me, like just being honest with you guys, the negotiation aspect, it's an act, and there's an element of deciding how you're going to present yourself and what you're going to do. And part of that sometimes is having somebody internally that you can play off of to help drive an outcome. And again, we've been doing good cop, bad cop since the dawn of time. So it's not like I'm reinventing the wheel here, but I think what I do is I make it very obvious that this is what we're doing and this is what we're trying to drive at. So in order to get a more fair shake out of a vendor on price, I'm bringing your biggest detractor. I'm bringing the person that's bringing another vendor in that they want us to seriously look at. I need you to help me win them over. Oh, and guess what? They control the purse strings too. So you're going to have to, that's going to be one of the levers that you need to pull, but you need to bring some technical teams to bear to talk about deficiencies. You need to do all these other things in order to get us to the point where you'll get this person across the line. And yes, of course, cost will be one of them. And if you have that relationship with somebody, they get excited about partnering with you. They get excited about helping drive outcome for the business. They get excited about having their name associated with, we announce savings. We talk about them openly. When we negotiate a great contract, we tell everybody internally. We don't go put it on Twitter or anything. But we celebrate it, and it's a big thing for us, and people want to have their name associated with that because that's a nice win, right? And so there's ways to bring those stakeholders along, get them invested, get them being part of the process, and it really does make the negotiating easy. You don't always have to end up being the hammer. So that would definitely be one I would say. This is an easy one, offering the testimonials to drive a little bit down here or there. It's one I kind of threw in. I think it's honestly, I probably don't use it as much as I could or should, but I guess I'm not doing as many new agreements these days as I am renewals. But this is really something you get up front when you're doing initially to kind of get yourself an extra little bump off if you offer a testimonial or you have, obviously it would encourage checking with your legal and marketing departments, but if they want to use your logo, those are little levers that you can pull to get additional discounting here and there at the last second. So some of that stuff might be really obvious, so I apologize if it is, but it bears mentioning because make it a part of a checklist. Otherwise, you won't remember it every time, and it can be a nice little get. And then I'll close this out with this is just my tried and true. It really is. When I talk about transparency, sometimes to a fault, but I'm very real. I'm very real with our account executives, and I think that as a result, we end up establishing really good relationships. I mean, so you want to talk about what transparency does and how it feeds you being a master negotiator. The relationships that I built, I'll tell a story. At a past company, I purchased a software scanning tool. It just so happened that the town I relocated to in Florida, I was out at a kid's school event one day wearing some software t-shirt like Databricks or something, and I run into a guy. He asked me if I worked there. No, turns out he works at that company. We strike up a friendship. Our kids start playing. Great relationship with the vendor. They integrate well. Everything happens great. I leave. A couple of days ago, I get a Slack from one of our folks in a company we just acquired. He's like, hey, I just met with so and so, and they said that they knew you. We're talking to them about buying a software. And I was like, great. You proceed down the path of that conversation. Kevin and I will iron out the commercials when we get there. Kevin, meanwhile, had already texted me, hey, you know the deal we're going to get. Don't even worry about this. We want this to be done. I didn't even negotiate. So the transparency bit, helps you in the fact of the minute of the negotiation, but building relationships and being transparent, being viewed as that makes it to the point where you don't have to fight vendors anymore. And then it just becomes you're making deals. Maybe Kevin and I are an outlier story. I don't want to say that you're making deals with friends and everybody's going to be your friend, but you're making deals with people you respect, and there's mutual admiration there, and a desire to get a deal done and work together. Where transparency has served me well is in a couple other areas. I will sometimes, if it's a matter of money, and I'm talking, I am shameless when it comes to my budget. I try to hold the line as much as possible. So like that idea of a renewal going up by 600 a month in this fiscal year. I went to the vendor straight up. I remember the scenario played out recently. Hey, look, for this fiscal year, can you bump me back down and then bring me up to the level that you want me at starting next fiscal year, and I'll budget for it, and I'll be sure to build in growth for the following year as well, so that we don't run into this problem again. And they did it. So being fully honest sometimes works. If you're trying to defend every penny and really like getting down to brass tacks of wanting to hit your budgets and your numbers, that lever really works. And then I would say, I think I'll close out, and then I got to jump to the key takeaways. I knew I would talk a lot about this, but there's also a scenario where you gain an opportunity to establish a good rapport and a relational thing. And we recently left a vendor, and I will admit, maybe not as gracefully as we should have in terms of notifying them. How many times have folks on this call been left to hold the bag to tell a vendor that we weren't renewing or that they weren't renewing? But being sincere about apologizing for that, and also creating an opportunity and saying, hey, we'll open it up so you can talk to our team, so you can understand why you lost the business. I know it doesn't help you get it back, but we want to leave on a good foot, because you never know, we may come back. And so, an opportunity to also view scenarios where you're not negotiating, but just establishing a relationship and finding ways to kind of endear yourself to folks so that they'll want to go to bat for you next time, or they know if you're putting a little bit of extra pressure to get a couple points shaved off, that there's sincerity and there's rationale behind it, and it's not just you playing for sport, so to speak. So that kind of talks about those key levers and tactics. Kind of takeaways. All right, real quick, I'll blow through these. You want to do the discovery. We talked about that, learning the market, building the partnership, creating a usable process will make you a partner people want to work with, which will empower you to be a better negotiator on behalf of your business. Being approachable internally and externally, building good, solid relationships, being transparent with your negotiation partner, celebrating the wins and involving everybody in the business, which allows you to drive better value for the business. So thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope somebody took something away from this. Yeah, thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.